It's everything you loved about the original. Creamy, savory, delicious, but with less sugar and more protein. So, let me know what you think of this new shirt. My wife picked it out, and she says I look nice in colors. One of the things that I've been focusing on is instead of just completely removing things that I like to eat because they're not necessarily the healthiest, is instead altering them and making them better for me. And this is one of my absolute favorites. With almost 90 grams of protein per serving, this is a weekly staple. And I'll be honest, this recipe took me a while to figure out because it's typically pretty high in sugar, pretty high in fat, and mediocre in protein. But there are 4 changes that make all the difference. And now on to our first of 4 major changes, our chicken. Now, typically I would be using pork for something like this. This is a pretty common ingredient. It's using ground pork instead of anything else. However, ground pork typically has a lot of fat in it. And you can get chicken with a lot of fat as well, but chicken is just a nicer, leaner and cleaner protein than pork is. So we're gonna be using 1 pound of 92% lean, 8% fat. If you can find it leaner than that, by all means, but I think that's a pretty nice compromise. And then to that pound of ground chicken, we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of Chinese light soy sauce, 1 tablespoon of oyster sauce. I keep telling myself I'm gonna put this stuff in a squeeze bottle, and I haven't yet, but I will eventually. It's such a pain in the butt. Half a tablespoon of gochugaru or Korean chili flakes. Then to balance that out, we're going on with half a tablespoon of sugar. And instead of this, you can absolutely use a 0 sugar substitute. I like the monk fruit stuff, but my wife isn't the biggest fan of it. I think it's a mental thing because to me they taste exactly the same, but that's a totally different discussion, but it's entirely up to you. And then we'll just finish it off with a pinch of salt. Now, by no means do you have to use your hand to mix this all up. I just find it's the most efficient way to do it, but you can absolutely use a spoon if you have a texture thing and don't really want to touch it, no problem at all. And then we can just go ahead and set this aside for later. Now, moving on to our sauce, this is where we're gonna see the bulk of our changes. And speaking of changes, major change number 2. Typically we would use peanut butter here because it's great, it's easy to use, it's got a good consistency. But it also has a ton of extra sugar and fat in it that we don't need. So instead of peanut butter, we're gonna be using peanut butter powder, specifically sugar-free peanut butter powder. It's more or less just ground up peanuts, but there's also a couple sweeteners in there that are not sugar. There's monk fruit in there, but you can also just do the regular one as well. So into our container, we're gonna go in with half a cup of that peanut butter powder. And you might be thinking, man, Ian, that's it's not nearly as smooth as regular peanut butter. How are we going to get our sauce all nice and smooth? Well, voice in my head, let me tell you, we're gonna be using silken tofu. Now, please, for the love of all things, don't just like, it's tofu. Tofu's great, especially silken tofu, because silken tofu is essentially just like a really smooth and creamy paste, basically, but it does hold its structure. It's just also very, very fragile. So today, to help us get that really smooth and creamy texture and consistency that we want, we are adding 11 ounces of silken tofu. And while subbing out traditional peanut butter, which helps to remove a lot of that extra fat and sugar, in order to get the consistency we're looking for using silken tofu, we're also adding an additional protein, because depending on the brand that you use, like mine goes to 21 grams. So trust me when I say that this is a great idea. I promise you, if you're someone who doesn't like tofu, like don't let this stop you from trying it because it doesn't taste like tofu, it doesn't have the consistency of tofu, it's just going to blend up into a very smooth and silky sauce and you would never know. I don't know what's up with all the tofu hate because I love tofu, but I understand people don't like it. Just trust me on this, I promise you. If you don't like it, come back and tell me and be like, hey, I didn't like it. Now into our cup, we're also adding in 2 tablespoons of Chinese light soy sauce, a teaspoon of Chinese dark soy sauce, a tablespoon of rice vinegar, half a tablespoon of sesame oil, pulling off 4 cloves of garlic, a 1/4 inch knob of ginger, about half a tablespoon of sugar, and again, you can sub this out for a 0 sugar alternative, and then we're just gonna add a small pinch of salt because we can always add more later. And for our 3rd major change, instead of using water, we're gonna be using Kettle and Fire's chicken bone broth, which just so happens to be the sponsor of today's video. Now, for those of you who don't know, Kettle and Fire make top quality, all natural bone broth. It's high in protein with 19 grams per serving, which while adding to the flavor of our sauce is also gonna help to increase the amount of protein. Plus it's naturally high in collagen and electrolytes. And they do it the right way, the way that I do it. They slow simmer their bones to maximize the amount of flavor and nutrients they can extract. And actually, they do it better than I do because half the time I don't have the patience to do it the right way. But that's okay, because I always have boxes on hand. I add it to soups, pastas, marinades, sauces, and I even just sip on it. So if you're looking for an easy way to improve the taste of your favorite recipes, while adding in some extra protein, try Kettle and Fire. It's become my simple go-to, and they've hooked me up with an exclusive discount so you can save 20% off using the link below. First, we need to go ahead and blend up our sauce. Now, you don't have to use one of these cup blenders. You can absolutely use a stick blender or just a regular blender. I like this size and form factor for something like this because it makes it really convenient. But if you don't have something like this, then you can totally just use a regular blender. And you can, technically speaking, do this by hand and whisk it all together. It would just be a lot of work. Not like an undoable amount of work, but just more work than you'd want it to be. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and make sure this is nice and tight. Lock this bad boy in. All right, and now that all of that is nicely mixed, we can carefully open this up. Oh, that smells amazing. Guys, I'm telling you that like this tofu thing, hack, absolute hack. Look at how smooth and silky this sauce is. I'm just saying you have to try this and then you're gonna try it and you're gonna be like, wow, Ian, you're amazing. Thank you for telling me about this because I had a bias to tofu before, but now I love it. You must be the guy who just promotes tofu. Nope, just a guy who likes it. And now moving on, we shall begin our cooking, which is gonna start with boiling some water. How's your day going? What's new with you? Anything we should be celebrating? I feel like I haven't checked in a while, and I'm sorry for that. I hope that you're doing well. I hope your family's happy and healthy, and I just hope that you're enjoying yourself. Be proud of yourself. I love you. Here we go. Now we'll go ahead and set that on high and let that just come to a boil while we cook everything else. Now for the majority of our cooking today, we're gonna be using a 10-inch stainless steel skillet. Normally for something like this, I would say use a 12-inch skillet, but we're gonna be cooking things in batches, so 10 inches is plenty because we're not trying to throw everything all in at one time. Because if you're gonna do that, then it's gonna make a big mess, and then you would wanna go to a 12-inch, but because we're not doing that, 10 inch is fine. And now as this preheats, it is very important. Like this is one of the most important things you could do for this recipe. Like, comment, subscribe. Seriously, like not a joke, but like really, it helps tremendously. We are a continuously growing group of people who love to cook and love to eat, and most importantly, love to support each other along this journey. So thank you so much. I appreciate you being a part of it. Now that our pan has been preheating on medium-high heat, we're gonna go ahead and add in a little bit of neutral oil, just a couple tablespoons, nothing too much. We just want enough to coat the surface so that way our chicken doesn't stick and burn and be sad. Now we're just gonna go in with our chicken. And then we're just gonna carefully spread this out into one nice thin layer so it can sear really nicely and get good color and flavor. Now after leaving it alone for a couple of minutes, you can check our chicken is nicely moving, which means our crust is formed, which means we can start to break this apart into smaller bits of chicken. Now because our chicken was fairly lean, we wanna make sure that we're not overcooking it at all. We wanna get it just to the point where it's cooked and not drying out. And breaking it up like this helps to make sure we're cooking everything pretty evenly versus, you know, the outside's getting cooked and it starts to dry out. By the time the inside's cooked, it's all big mess. So we just wanna make sure we get all this nice and chopped up. And truthfully, your total cook time here is not much. You're the 2 minutes before it was searing, and we're chopping it up for another, give it like 2 to 2.5 minutes. It's really not very long. And as you can see, we've developed a little bit of a fond here on the bottom of our pan, which we are not gonna let go to waste. This is where we're gonna bring back in our chicken broth. So I'm gonna add in just a touch around the edge, probably about a 1/4 cup, and I'm just gonna scrape up that fond, all that flavor around the edge. That's gonna help to add a little bit more moisture back into our chicken, especially if it was dried out. It's not a big deal, you can totally save it. And now from here, our chicken is fully cooked. Now I'm gonna go ahead and remove this and place it into a bowl because we're gonna use this pan to heat up our sauce. Oh no, chicken down. And now turning our heat down to low, we're gonna go ahead and pour in our sauce. Now we're not really trying to cook our sauce here, we're just trying to make sure all those flavors have melted together properly and bring it up a little bit in temperature because we don't want it to be cold. This isn't a cold noodle dish today. We're doing a warm noodle dish, something that like feels like a nice hug. And it also doesn't hurt to scrape off that chicken flavor that's still in our pan. Don't want any of it to go to waste. Now at this point, this is where it becomes a personal preference thing. If you like your sauce to be a little thinner, you may want to add in a little bit more chicken broth. Totally fine. If you like your sauce thicker, you can cook it down a little more to thicken it up. It is also a good time to check for salt. I use a little salt. And then once it's warm and just barely a little steamy, we can go ahead and kill our heat, and we're just gonna let this sit until we're ready to plate. Now, onto our noodles, or should I say, major change number 4. Now, noodles are not gonna be the biggest source of your protein, but I think that oftentimes it gets forgotten that they can be a source of protein. So when you're looking for noodles, you can look for ones that are wheat or buckwheat, and those ones are gonna have more protein than your typical like generic ramen noodle. For instance, mine have 15 grams of protein per serving, which is great because it's a huge addition without really changing anything. So this is where, when you're going to the grocery store and you're looking for your noodles, look for something that you probably already would have gotten once or twice, but now you're intentionally seeking it out because it has that higher protein level in it. You don't have to go and get like the weird, gross protein noodles because sometimes those have like a weird texture to them. Just look for something that has higher protein. We are already doing so much more work on the other end of this recipe to add in more protein that this doesn't have to be like a huge source of it, but it doesn't hurt to select a noodle that has more protein. And unrelated to the protein side of it, I will always recommend using fresh noodles, but whatever you have access to, It's gonna work great. I'm gonna go ahead and drop mine in. And because mine are fresh noodles, I wanna make sure I'm keeping them moving because I don't want any of them to stick together. And don't forget, this is one of those times where it really doesn't matter how long I'm cooking my noodles for. Check your package directions because they're probably gonna be different than mine. Mine say about 4 to 5 minutes, but check your package directions and also just like, check it out. Like if yours say 4 to 5 minutes, pull it out at like 3.5. Take a noodle out, take a bite. So he's like, is it ready? Is it not? Because you'd rather check it early and have it be not ready yet than check it too late and it's like, oh crap, now they're mushy. And then it's sad. Nobody wants sad noodles. And see, mine are now done at about 3 minutes and 45 seconds, so glad I checked. Now we can go ahead and lay in a bed of our noodles, followed by our creamy peanut sauce, our crispy chicken, a nice stack of cucumbers, green onions, and either finishing with sesame seeds or a light drizzle of chili oil. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed it. I really hope that you learned something. Here's some videos I think you'd like to watch next. Here's a framed poster of the vow that I mailed to Channing Tatum when I was in high school that he then signed and mailed back to me, and I will see you next week.